It's going to be a gem. We're going to share some very important information for how to get your best A1C. You ready, Cyrus?
100%. I am very excited for tonight's webinar. I feel like there's a lot of really informative, really good information to share, and I cannot wait.
Absolutely. There's going to be a lot of myths busted tonight, a lot of good information about exactly what to do to get your best A1C in a very quick amount of time in a lot of cases. Sometimes some people, you got to be a little more patient, but in a lot of cases, quick results. So if you are just coming in, let us know in the chat box where you're coming from. And we're going to also launch a poll here so you can let us know what type of diabetes you're living with. All right. There we go.
Yeah, we love to see where the where our audience is, and we generally get a pretty what's the word I'm looking for? A really international audience. So
right.
Tell us in the chat box. Tell us exactly where you're coming from.
Do you think anybody will tune in from Zimbabwe?
100%. We actually, that's the bulk of our audience these days. It used to be the West Coast, and then it was the East Coast, and now it's Zimbabwe for whatever reason. So
it's amazing to see the enthusiasm coming out of that area.
The internet's a powerful machine, let me tell you.
Absolutely. All right. So we have Monica from Los Angeles. Love that. I'm in Los Angeles as well. All right. Australia tuning in here. Terrific.
Fantastic. We got all types of people here.
We have someone from Ecuador. Beth from Ecuador. That's terrific. Kevin from the UK. Susan from the Villages in Florida. I know. I've been to the Villages.
Ooh, very cool. Alaska. Terry from Alaska coming in. Nice. Oh. Western Australia, Alabama, New York, South Africa. Ooh, wait. Who's South Africa? South Africa. Who's that? There we go. Cherry from South Africa. That's the most exotic place so far. Christina from South Korea. Coming in strong.
This is terrific. We have Sandra from St. Cloud, Minnesota. I love it when Sandra tunes in.
Robert from Venezuela. Very exotic. I'm liking what I'm seeing. Oh, the Maritimes, Canada.
Look at that.
I didn't even know that was a place.
Amazing.
All types of stuff here.
So on our poll, we have a majority of people living with type 2 diabetes, about 56%, plus you add in prediabetes. We have prediabetes and type 2 roughly at 70%. And then we have another 11% with type 1. It's great to see type 1 being represented well tonight. And then we have about 18% who either don't have diabetes or a loved one has diabetes, if you combine those two. So this is a good turnout so far.
For sure. So we got about 245 people here, 250 people here. And we're expecting probably a little over 300, maybe 350 tonight. So thanks for getting in early. This is a fun one. Okay, in the chat box, here's another question I want to ask you guys. Do you fully understand what your A1C is? If you feel like you are an A1C master, write the word yes in the chat box. If you feel like the A1C is kind of, it's a vague concept and maybe you know something, maybe you don't understand anything, write the word no. Okay? Yes means you're an A1C and you can give the presentation. No means, oh boy, I'm confused.
I'm seeing a balanced reply here of yeses and nos.
Got a lot of yeses. Look at this. No,
yeah.
Yes. No, I got a couple of maybes. Some no's, some no. Yes, no, yes, no. Wow. Sorta. Nice, Sandy. Nice work.
Maybe somebody in the audience can give the webinar for us tonight.
Seriously, I kind of want to go get some dinner. So let's see here. I'm gonna point someone to give the webinar. Susan, since you're the A1C master, get to give the webinar.
Oh, that's great.
That would actually be really cool if you showed up to a webinar and then you were just put on the spot to give it.
Yeah, that would be fun.
One day we can do that. Okay, what do you think? Should we get started?
Let's do it. Let's look at the poll. We'll finish that up here. So percentages stayed about the same. Lots of prediabetes, type 2 diabetes, type 1 represented well. Great turnout. We'll end the poll and we'll get started.
Fantastic.
Right.
Okay.
If you have any questions throughout the webinar, just type them in the chat box and we'll do our best to answer as many as we can at the end of the webinar.
Perfect. Here we go. I'm going to share my screen. So let me know if and when you can see my screen.
Absolutely. Here we go.
Technology. See what we got.
We have somebody who says it would be fun to give the presentation. I like that enthusiasm.
All right. Make a note of who it is.
Okay.
What do you
I
see?
got them. I got them written down. We can see your screen. It looks great.
All right. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Today we're going to be talking about how to get your best A1C in the next 60 days. Now, we've given a similar presentation in the past, and I wanted to tweak today's presentation just a little bit because the A1C can be a straightforward metric, and it can also be a little bit confusing. So I wanted to kind of hammer into, in detail what the A1C is all about, and most importantly, why getting a good A1C is important, but it is not the end game of diabetes. All right, so here's what we're going to cover. We're going to talk about what your A1C represents from a biological perspective. Then we're going to talk about how your diet can influence your A1C level, whether it's a low carbohydrate or a high carbohydrate diet. We're going to talk about exercise, how that influences your A1C. And we're going to go into detail here about low carbohydrate diets, because even though they suppress your A1C, they actually can cause other problems, including insulin resistance, which we'll go into detail about. And then we'll talk about why your A1C is an incomplete indicator of your total diabetes health, like I was just alluding to. And finally, we'll talk about how to reduce your A1C and actually gain a tremendous amount of insulin sensitivity in the process. Okay. At the end of this webinar, we actually have a bonus that we want to give you guys. So it's really important that you guys stick around to the end. If you have questions at any point, what you guys can do is just go straight to the chat box and type them in. We have a whole team of people in the background that are reading your questions, and we want to get to them in the Q&A section. My wife, Kylie Buckner, she's going to be fielding a lot of questions. And if you guys need some help, then that's where to put it. Here's me. I have been living with type 1 diabetes for more than 15 years. I've gone through my story in detail over and over and over again, so I'll give you the condensed version. I tried a low carbohydrate diet when I was first diagnosed with type 1 in the year 2002. It didn't work. My blood glucose was a disaster. It was all over the place. In the quest to try and control my blood glucose, I came across a low-fat diet. I was very skeptical at first. I didn't think a low-fat diet could actually improve my overall health or control my blood glucose. But boy, was I wrong. I tried a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. It was the greatest decision I ever made. In the process, from 2002 to 2017, it's been 15 years. Not only have I experimented with my own personal diet and seen tremendous improvements in my ability to control my blood glucose, but I've also seen a number of other sort of like ancillary conditions improve. My cholesterol dropped, my blood pressure dropped, I had some inflammation on my skin that went away, my body odor went away. I used to bleed on my gums when I would brush my teeth, that went away. My health is in a completely different situation now. I don't get sick anymore. I used to get sick all the time. That doesn't happen anymore. And in this process, I got so excited about what was happening that I put myself back to graduate school. I went and I got a PhD in nutritional biochemistry so that I could talk about this and educate other people using evidence-based science. Because too often in this world of nutrition and diet, there's a lot of information that's spread which is not evidence-based. And you guys may have seen this. We'll go into a little bit of detail about what some of these techniques are. But the idea here is that if you're following a fad diet, it's not designed to work, and it's not designed to allow you to succeed in the long term. We teach evidence. We teach what has happened over the past 100 years in the evidence-based research. I'll walk you through a lot of it and teach you guys exactly how you could maximize your health and give yourself the best chance at reversing prediabetes and type 2 diabetes living with insulin resistance. In the process of the last 15 years, I've cut my insulin use by 40%. I eat a tremendous number of grams of carbohydrate per day, more than I thought was ever possible. And my A1C values are pretty much in the non-diabetic range every single time I get them checked, okay? That doesn't mean that I still don't have to inject insulin. I still have to because I'm living with type 1, but my blood glucose is very controlled, and as a result, my total body health is in fantastic shape.
I love how people in the chat box were asking about your muscles and how you get muscles with no protein. It was pretty funny.
We'll talk about that.
Well, you'll learn more tonight as we get into the foods on this program. But I'll give you my story real quickly here. We'll get into the presentation. My name is Robbie Barbero. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes over 18 years ago. And I've been following a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet for over 11 years now, closing in on 12. And I feel amazing. I have excellent control of my blood glucose. I'm active every day. Prior to this lifestyle, I had terrible allergies. I had serious acne, and I had to wear these blue boots on my feet because I had plantar fasciitis. And believe it or not, my diet actually fixed that problem. So it's just a testimony to how nutrition can impact all the cells in your body, inflammation and injuries and things that you might not think would be impacted by your diet, or at least certainly aren't talked about quite frequently. But I've been doing this for a long time, and the success I've seen in myself led me to go do more research and learn about this and then get into the field of educating people. So I'm super glad to be sharing this information, letting people know, like in this picture, if you want to eat a plate of figs, you're welcome to do that. You're going to learn tonight why you don't have to fear fruit, why carbohydrates are not the enemy. And I hope you learn a lot. So we're going to get right into the presentation.
Fantastic. By the way, if you guys hear a little bit of a jingling in the background, it's because my cats are in WrestleMania right now, and they're having some fun. So hopefully that doesn't get annoying. Here's the first question. What does your A1C actually represent? Please, in the chat box, here's what we want to know. If you have an idea of what your A1C actually represents from a biological perspective, please put that in the chat box, and then Robbie's going to read them so I can see what they are.
Okay, let's see what people believe their A1C is actually representing. So Patricia says it's a 3-month average.
Okay.
Let's see. We have Christy saying average glucose over 3 months.
Okay. Very good.
Lori says average 3-month blood sugar. We have average blood sugar over the past 3 months. Someone says average blood glucose over the past 3 months. Wendy says glucose sticking to the cells.
Okay.
Sandy says average 3-month glucose. Let's see, 3-month average blood glucose levels. Getting a lot of consistent answers here.
Okay, perfect. So a lot of you guys hit it on the head. It's your average blood glucose over the span of 3 months. Why 3 months? That seems a little weird. Let's go into detail, okay? Before we talk about your A1C, we have to talk about a molecule known as hemoglobin. So hemoglobin is a molecule that's found inside of red blood cells that are circulating in your blood. Now, hemoglobin is one of the most abundant molecules in your entire body, and its purpose is to act as an oxygen trap. So every time you take a deep breath in like this, and you go, what ends up happening is that you inhale nitrogen and carbon dioxide and oxygen, predominantly. The oxygen from that breath travels down into your lungs. It goes into these little structures called alveoli. And in the alveoli, the oxygen gets inside of your blood. And once it's inside of your blood, it has to get caught by something. And hemoglobin is the thing that does the catching. So think of it as literally like a baseball mitt. As soon as oxygen comes into your lungs, it goes right into hemoglobin, and hemoglobin says, cool, I got it, thanks so much, and then it starts moving through your blood. Now, what hemoglobin's responsibility to do is very simple. It not only traps oxygen in your blood, but its goal is to actually donate that oxygen to tissues all throughout your body, because tissues in every part of your body require oxygen. Your gallbladder needs oxygen, your muscles need oxygen, your brain needs oxygen, your tongue needs oxygen, your eyes need oxygen, okay? So hemoglobin's job is to grab onto that oxygen, pull it into your blood, and then transport it to a tissue that says, hey, by the way, I need some oxygen, can I have it? At that point, hemoglobin says, sure, and it releases the oxygen and it gives it to a tissue, okay? So here's a kind of quick little cartoon of exactly what's happening, right? So, the oxygen gets trapped inside of these, inside of the hemoglobin molecules, okay? Now, everything would be fine if this were the only function of hemoglobin, and this was the only thing that was actually happening to hemoglobin on a cellular basis. But one of the things that happens that makes hemoglobin relevant to people living with diabetes is that hemoglobin not only traps oxygen, but it also gets glucose stuck to it unintentionally. That's not the way it was designed, but in the process of existing, glucose molecules that are floating in your blood end up just getting attached to it. So when this process occurs, it's called, the hemoglobin is glycosylated. Okay? And that's just a fancy super nerd way of saying glucose becomes attached to it. So as the glucose level in your blood starts to increase, then the amount of glucose residues that are attached to hemoglobin, again, unintentionally, also goes up. Okay, and you can see right here in this center portion, it says, because red blood cells have a half-life or a lifespan of 120 days, glycated hemoglobin reflects the glucose levels over the preceding 2 to 3 months, okay? So every time you go to the doctor and every time you read online about your A1C, it's all about 3 month, 3 month, 3 month, 3 month. And the reason is because hemoglobin has a life. The actual lifespan of hemoglobin in your blood is approximately 3 months. It's approximately 90 days. Okay, so if that's the case, then the determining how much glucose is stuck to these hemoglobin molecules gives you an indicator of whether your overall blood glucose control is good or if there's too much glucose floating in your blood. So what's a good range for hemoglobin A1C? Okay, so right here you see that this is what's called healthy A1C levels, okay? And then we see trending towards prediabetes and then diabetes. So right here, the cutoff number is right here, 5.7%. So if you go to the doctor and you get your A1C level measured and your A1C is 5.6 or below, then technically speaking, you're protected against long-term complications. And what that means is technically speaking, you're in the quote unquote non-diabetic state. When your A1C ranges between 5.7 and 6.4, then you are living, technically speaking, you are living with pre-diabetes. And then if your A1C goes from 6.5 and beyond, that's diagnostic criteria for living with type 2 diabetes, okay? So again, non-diabetic, pre-diabetic, and then type 2 diabetes. Now, if you're living with type 1 diabetes like Robbie and myself, okay, the goal in type 1 diabetes is to try and get your A1C to somewhere about the 6.0 range, somewhere between, I'll call it 6.0 and 6.5. If you can get your A1C into this range and you're not experiencing hypoglycemia frequently, then you're doing a great job. Some people are able to get their A1C between 5.5 and 6.0, again, without frequent hypoglycemia. And if you can do that, then you're doing a great job as well. Okay, so ideally, if you're living with, you don't have an autoimmune version of diabetes, the goal is to try and get you below 5.7. But if you do have autoimmune diabetes, then anywhere in the 5.5 to 6.5 range means you're doing an excellent, excellent job. Okay, so like I said earlier, approximately 5 to 5.6% of hemoglobin molecules are normally glycosylated in healthy humans, okay? So here you have a blood vessel on your right-hand side. And here I've basically just given a quick schematic of, a ton of hemoglobin in circulation. And this blue dot represents glucose that's attached to this one hemoglobin molecule. So under normal circumstances, you might look at a picture that looks like this, and approximately, 5 to 5.6% of all the hemoglobin has glucose attached to it, okay? Now, if you slightly increase that number, okay, we're not talking about large amounts of glucose that are now stuck to all of these hemoglobin molecules, just a little bit more elevates your A1C just enough that you now are technically in the pre-diabetic state. And then if you get just a little bit more, and now you're in the 6.5% and higher range, then you're technically living with type 2 diabetes, okay? So the take-home message here is that glucose sticks to hemoglobin, and by measuring how much is stuck, you can get a good indicator of your overall blood glucose control. And it doesn't take much to elevate your hemoglobin A1C. It really doesn't. Okay. So now the next question is, well, how does your diet actually affect your A1C level? And this is where things get really interesting. Okay. Your food is your most powerful medicine, regardless of whether we're talking about diabetes or heart disease or cancer or kidney failure or Alzheimer's disease or no disease at all. Your food is by far the most important thing that you can put into your body that's going to determine your risk for all chronic diseases. Now, if you have a blood glucose profile that looks like this one in the red, chances are when you go get your A1C value checked, if this blood glucose profile happens frequently, then your A1C is going to be high because, as you can see, blood glucose gets elevated. And as a result of that, this area under this curve is larger and larger and larger. On the other hand, if your blood glucose control is somewhere like you see in green, then your A1C is going to be nice and low, and that's going to protect you against the development of chronic diseases in the future. So the red means high, the green means low. Ultimately, what we're trying to do is shoot for that green line. It can be tricky to get there, especially if you're living with type 1 diabetes, but it's not impossible at all. So low fat and low protein foods are going to maximize your insulin sensitivity. We've talked about this in many, many, many webinars. And hopefully you guys have either attended those webinars or maybe you've seen some of stuff that we've published online. But when you eat a low fat, low protein diet, which is also tends to be low in fat, what ends up happening is that you end up storing glucose inside of your liver. So you can see here in blue, you get more storage of glucose and less storage of fatty acids in your liver. You get the same picture unfolding in your muscle. So if you're eating lots of fruits, lots of vegetables, legumes, beans, lentils, peas, whole grains that are minimally processed, that are intact, then chances are the status of your liver and your muscle will appear like this, where these tissues are more reliant on glucose than they are on fatty acids, simply because there's more glucose in circulation and more glucose in your food than there is fatty acids. Now, the key take-home message here is that those foods are low in fat and they're low in protein. When they're low in fat and they're low in protein, that's what maximizes your insulin sensitivity. Okay? Now, it turns out that foods that are low in fat, generally speaking, are also low in protein. So if you take a look at, red meat or cheese or eggs or fish, these foods tend to be slightly higher in their fat content and also slightly higher in their protein content, because fat and protein tend to travel together. So again, when you're eating these types of foods, these foods are low in fat and low in protein at the same time, because again, they like to stick together. High fat, high protein foods, on the other hand, actually cause insulin resistance. So notice the picture here has shifted. Instead of there being a lot of storage of blue and a little bit of storage of yellow, we now have the opposite situation, where there's more yellow than there is blue. So there's effectively more reliance on fatty acids inside of your liver and more reliance on fatty acids inside of your muscle. And when this picture unfolds, then you end up with insulin resistance. So the foods that cause this problem, that actually create a state of insulin resistance, are things like red meat, chicken or poultry, white meat, fish, including things like salmon and trout, shellfish included, lobster, crab, mussels, okay? All dairy products, whether it's milk or cheese or cream or yogurt, and eggs. Okay, so all of these foods tend to be both high in fat and high in protein. And these are the types of foods that when you eat these over the course of time, you end up developing this distribution of fuels, more fatty acids and less glucose inside of both your muscle and your liver. Okay, again, one more time, these foods are both high in fat and high in protein because they tend to travel together, and it's quite straightforward. So here's the main difference. Look, more blue, less yellow, less blue, more yellow. What we want you guys to do is eventually get into this state right here, because when you are insulin sensitive and when you can maximize your insulin sensitivity, that means that tissues are less reliant on fatty acids. And when tissues are less reliant on fatty acids, there's less fatty acids in circulation in your blood, which means there's less cholesterol in your blood, which means there's less cholesterol inside of tissues, which means there's less fat inside of tissues, which means that tissues function more optimally. And that right there can reduce your risk for all types of chronic complications, like chronic kidney disease, like fatty liver, like Alzheimer's disease, which is now being called insulin resistance of your brain. It can protect you against digestive problems. It can protect you against erectile dysfunction, atherosclerosis, high cholesterol, high blood pressure. The list goes on and on. All right. Now, when it comes to your A1C, here's something that can get a little bit confusing. On the left-hand side, we have foods that are low in fat and low in protein. And if you eat these types of foods, you can get your A1C to between 5.0 and 6.0, which is, again, a very good A1C and considered on the low end of risk for complications. So it's possible to achieve an A1C of between 5 and 6 when eating carbohydrate-rich foods that are high in nutrient density and low in fat and low in protein. Now, when you eat these foods over here on the right, what do you think is going to happen to your A1C? Before I give you the answer, why don't you put it in the chat box? Is your A1C, when you eat these foods, is it going to go up greater than between 5 and 6? Or is it going to go down to less than between 5 and 6? Tell me what you think.
Okay, let's see. Let's see what the audience. Okay, Rowena says up. Sandy says up. Bridget says up. Venus, it's going up. Okay. Let's see. Somebody said it's going to go down. Susan says more than 6%. Lori says up. Jose says up.
Okay.
I see lots of ups.
Does anybody
increase?
Does anybody think your A1C is going to go down by eating the foods you see on the right?
Josie says down.
Josie.
Let's see here. Darren says up.
Okay. So it looks like what, 80, 90% of people think it's going to go up?
That looks like it, yeah.
Okay. All right, my friends. The answer is down. The answer is down. How the heck can eating these foods actually cause your A1C to go down? Right. This is exactly the problem in diabetes right here. This is the crux of the argument. If you go read people in the ketogenic world, if you go read ketogenic blogs, ketogenic books, or maybe even like paleo books and low carbohydrate, methodology, what a lot of these people will tell you, and what a lot of doctors will tell you, is that when you limit your carbohydrate-rich foods, okay, the ones that you see here on the left, fruits, vegetables, legumes, and whole grains, if you minimize this stuff, then your blood glucose fluctuations go down. And like we talked about earlier, if your blood glucose fluctuations come down, then your A1C also comes down. So it's pretty straightforward. Just eat more meat, eat more dairy, eat more eggs, eat more fish, eat more vegetable oil. If you do this, then your A1C comes down. And you know what? They are right. They are correct. They are not lying. The biology makes perfect sense. If you eat these foods shown here on the right, and at the same time you limit your intake of carbohydrate-rich foods, then your blood glucose becomes more controllable, it becomes more stable, and your A1C goes down. So that's the confusing part, because people say, hey, look, I'm on this ketogenic diet, and my A1C went down. Prove to me that I'm doing something wrong. So here's where we got to take one more step forward, because your A1C is important, but your A1C doesn't tell the whole story. Okay. Again, if you look at the picture on the left-hand side, we're talking insulin sensitivity with an A1C between 5 and 6. On the right-hand side, I told you that high fat and high protein foods make you insulin resistant, but yet your A1C goes down. So that's very interesting. Now, let's back up here for a second. Why is insulin resistance a problem? Insulin resistance is a problem because it is a central node, which means that when you increase your risk for insulin resistance, or when you increase your actual level of insulin resistance by storing fat in tissues that are not designed to store fat, your risk for all chronic diseases goes way up, including things like cancer. Okay, there's plenty of documented scientific evidence that shows the more insulin resistant you become, the higher your risk for cancer. In the same boat, we got all of the cardiovascular mortalities, coronary artery disease, hypertension, atherosclerosis, high cholesterol. Okay, you can also become obese. You can increase your risk for fatty liver, which is a pretty gnarly one. You can also increase your risk for polycystic ovarian syndrome, Alzheimer's disease, again, insulin resistance of the brain, and then common diabetes complications, including neuropathy, retinopathy, kidney failure, blindness, or limb amputation, as well as erectile dysfunction. These are all real. So the less insulin resistant you are, the smaller your risk for all of these conditions, which is a good thing. So low carbohydrate diets, like I just said earlier, they reduce your A1C value because you have less fluctuations in your blood glucose. However, the trade-off is that you're getting a better A1C, but you're becoming more insulin resistant. So let me ask you this. Go back to the picture before. If I told you that I can get you an A1C of 4.8, okay, an A1C of 4.8, which is very low, but you're going to be living with insulin resistance, would you say, cool, I'm in, or would you say, no, I'm not in? You tell me. Go to the chat box and tell me exactly what you say.
Okay, let's see what comes in here. Let's see what we got.
Actually, here, let me put it this way. I'm going to give you two options. Option number one, you have an A1C of 4.7, but you're insulin resistant. Option number two, you have an A1C of 6.0, but you're insulin sensitive. Which one will you take? You take option A, which is a low A1C, or option B, which is an A1C of 6.0. You tell me.
Yes, for your initial question, a lot of people said, no, I'm not in.
Okay.
And so somebody said big fat out to your initial question.
I love it.
That was funny. That was funny. Okay, so now we're getting a lot of option Bs flooding the screen right now.
Option
a lot
B.
of Bs.
Good. It's a. I mean, I already gave you the answer, but that's my point. My point is that if you have tunnel vision and you focus only on your A1C value, and that's the only thing that you are giving any credence to, then you're missing the bigger picture, because you can likely develop insulin resistance, which can increase your risk for chronic disease in the future. So your A1C is important. There's no doubt about it, but it's not the most important thing, because if you develop insulin resistance in the process of dropping your A1C, then you've got a whole host of problems that are going to happen in the next 5 to 10 years. So this is what people on the ketogenic diet often say. And this also goes for people, Atkins, Zone, South Beach, Paleo, any of these low carbohydrate diets. They say things like, check it out, my A1C is 4.7. My blood glucose never been lower. In fact, I have a flat line blood glucose that's between 80 and 90 all day long. Beat that. You cannot beat that, right? And they'll say, look, take a look at my blood glucose. This is my CGM. Before I was on a ketogenic diet, my glucose was shown here on the top graph. It's all over the place. I would eat a plate of food, and then my glucose would go up, and I'd have to chase it back down. Now I'm on a ketogenic diet. Take a look at this flat line. Beat that. Prove to me that I'm doing something wrong. That's what they say. Okay? Once again, I'm going to hammer this point home. Great. You got a flat line. You have a flat line blood glucose profile shown right here. So that means your A1C is going to be nice and low. However, if you're living with insulin resistance, no deal. Big fat out. Okay? So these are the side effects of insulin resistance in the long term. You increase your risk for all these cardiovascular mortalities right here. Your heart disease risk goes up, hypertension, high cholesterol, triglycerides will go up, and your risk for atherosclerosis, which is the hardening of blood vessels, goes through the roof. It's just unbelievable how much your risk can go up simply by eating a ketogenic diet. Some of the studies I've read said that your risk for these cardiovascular mortalities can go up by like 30%. And some of them I've seen that your risk can go up as much as like 80 or 90%. Not worth it. At the same time, you can end up becoming carbohydrate intolerant, which is insulin resistance, and you can develop a fatty liver. And if you're living with fatty liver, you know somebody living with fatty liver, then you probably understand that it's something that can be really difficult to overcome. It's totally possible, but it's not something you want to mess around with at all. As far as inflammation is concerned, more insulin resistance means more inflammation, which means more cancer, because cancer is an inflammatory condition. Cancer is the mother of all inflammatory conditions. And the more inflammation there is in your body, whether it's in your brain, in your thyroid gland, in your prostate gland, in your breast tissue, in your large intestine, I don't care where it is, where that inflammation exists, that's where cancer can start to develop. And then when it comes to a lot of these other sort of ancillary problems, we have things like low energy, impaired digestion, a really difficult time eating food, a difficult time going to the bathroom, food cravings that can be super intense. And a lot of people, they might lose weight and then plateau and then gain weight again. So here's my question to you again. If you've ever been on a low carbohydrate diet, or if you are on a low carbohydrate diet right now, tell me, of the things that you see on the screen right now, which of these have you experienced? If the answer is none, write none. But if you have experienced any of these symptoms, please write it in the chat box so I can get an idea of what you guys have seen.
Okay, let's see how many people have experienced the symptoms listed, any of the symptoms listed on the screen. Let's see what we got here. We have Arlene saying weight gain and food cravings.
Okay.
Paula says impaired digestion.
Okay.
Not losing weight. Joanne says all. Everything under heart disease when I was eating meat. Most of them. Food cravings, weight plateau, inability to lose weight, colon cancer. That's unfortunate. Man. It's more motivation to get good information out there. Okay, so hypertension, fatty liver, low energy, all of them, multiple sclerosis, or multiple side effects, neuropathy, weight gain, low energy, high cholesterol, weight gain, thyroid issues.
Okay, good. So, I mean, not good, but you guys get it. You guys understand this. I am literally preaching to the choir right now, and that's okay. But now you guys have a little bit more information about the fact that, okay, your A1C is important, but it's not as important if your risk for these things starts to go up over time, because these things can cause these things are manifestations of metabolic dysfunction that can get worse and worse and worse over time. Perfect example, Christopher Hertel came to our program last year. He was overweight, had hypertension, high cholesterol, type 1 diabetes, and rheumatoid arthritis at the same time. He was on 12 medications, 12 oral medications for the problems that I just listed. On top of that, he was also using basal and bolus insulin. And he started our program, and within a very short period of time, he started to lose weight, and his insulin requirements started to come down. Over the course of the last 11 months, Chris has dropped 76 pounds. Chris never tried to lose 76 pounds. He just did. So he lost 76 pounds. His fasting blood glucose got cut in half. His A1C came from the somewhat danger zone down into the 5.2 range, which is very challenging for someone living with type 1, but he's on the ball. He's using less basal and less bolus insulin every single day. And the best part is that Chris got off of 12 oral medications. Chris thought for the rest of his life that he would be on oral medication for high cholesterol, for hypertension, for rheumatoid arthritis. And one by one, they started to come off and come off and come off and come off and come off. And now he's a completely different person altogether. Okay? So I just want to kind of give you a quick insight here into like how powerful a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet can truly be. You know, if Chris can do this, I guarantee you can do it. There's no question about it, okay? Now, when it comes to exercise, this is what exercise does. Exercise allows tissues to take glucose for free. And when I say free, I mean they can uptake glucose without needing any insulin. So when you're exercising, your muscles send out a signal and they basically say, hey, I need some glucose and I need some glucose now, because glucose is a fuel. And that fuel is what they use to actually perform contractions during exercise. Your liver also says, hey, I need some glucose too, because your liver is like the Mother Teresa of your body, of your glucose metabolism. And what your liver is doing is it's storing glucose in between meals, and then it's giving glucose out when necessary. When you're exercising, your liver is dumping glucose into your blood so that that glucose can leave your liver and get inside of your muscle. So your muscle's using it, your liver's providing it, and now you have a situation where both of these tissues are pretty hungry. So the next time you go eat a meal, whether it's a banana, a bowl of quinoa, a bowl of rice, some raisins, whatever has glucose energy in it, that glucose ends up marching its way into tissues needing zero insulin. zero insulin, because this is called insulin independent glucose uptake. So that glucose can basically get in for free, but it only happens for a very short period of time. So that's a good thing, because now you're finding a way to get glucose inside of tissues, and it's keeping your insulin dependence or your insulin exposure nice and low. Now, when you're resting, suppose you go and perform exercise in the morning, and then you have 23 more hours of rest before you go do exercise again. During that 1 hour period where you're exercising, this insulin independent glucose uptake is happening. And it actually happens for usually about half an hour, maybe about an hour after you exercise as well. But then for the other 22 hours of the day, you're still more insulin sensitive, because you're still going to need a little bit of insulin to get glucose into these tissues. You just need less than you did before exercise. So small amounts of insulin, shown here in the green, okay, come to the door of tissues and they say, hey, knock, knock, I got some glucose in your blood. Do you want to take it? And these tissues respond by saying, oh, of course, give me some of this stuff. Absolutely. So the minute you go eat something that's carbohydrate rich, that glucose appears in your blood, and that glucose can get inside of tissues using small amounts of insulin, not large, just small amounts. So exercise is really effective because it allows glucose to get outside of your blood or get into tissues without insulin during exercise and right after exercise. And then when you're resting, it still makes you more insulin sensitive. And as a result of that, your blood glucose values come down. And that's a good thing, because we said earlier, when your blood glucose comes down, then your A1C also drops. So your A1C generally is going to move to the left as you become more and more and more active. And that's a good thing, because exercise is effectively a substitute for insulin, because both of them do the same thing. And exercise is just something that you can use as a tool to substitute for insulin, or to help insulin become more powerful. And as a result of that, you get rewarded with a better A1C value. Now, when it comes to exercise, consistent movement is the second most powerful insulin sensitizer in your diet. I'm sorry, in your lifestyle. Number one is your diet. Number two is the consistency of your movement, because if you're exercising on a frequent basis, it doesn't have to be at a high intensity. It doesn't have to be for long periods of time. It's the consistency that will continue to benefit your muscle, your liver, and keep those tissues nice and sensitive so that they can drop your blood glucose values. And what we recommend in our coaching program is to move your body about 6 days per week for approximately 30 minutes per day. Now, if you can get to about 6 days per week for 30 minutes a day, that's a total of 180 minutes of exercise, which is 3 hours over the course of a week. It's much better to do it this way than it is to say, all right, Cyrus, I did 3 hours on Sunday because I went for a hike with my kids, and then I sat on my butt Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday. No good. It's not going to work. It's not going to work. You want an A1C reduction? You spread that exercise out. A little bit on Sunday, a little bit on Monday, and so on and so forth. A little bit every single day makes a much, much bigger impact on your A1C value. Common myth, people say you have to do this stuff called HIIT training or HIIT training, which is high intensity interval training. They say if you do high intensity interval training, then it's going to benefit your insulin sensitivity the most, and you're going to it's going to drop your A1C the quickest. Not a true statement at all. Not even remotely true. You do not have to train at high intensity in order to get incredible impact on your A1C value and to reduce your risk for diabetes. So all that's important is to be consistent and to make sure that you're exercising at a medium intensity and that you're doing it on a frequent basis. You do that, you have yourself a recipe for success. And what I recommend here is splitting your movement between approximately 3 days of cardiovascular movement, shown here on the left, and approximately 3 days of resistance movement, shown here on the right. If you can do that, then you're going to get the cardiovascular benefits, which is going to improve the function of blood vessels all throughout your body, and you're going to be able to specifically target muscles in your body that are going to become hungrier and hungrier so that they can literally suck glucose into tissues during and after exercise. So a perfect example is Lindsay. She's living with type 1 diabetes, just like Robbie and myself. She has been following our program now for probably over a year and a half at this point. When she first joined the program, her A1C was at 7.2. So she was elevated for sure. And she was tired of living with a high A1C. She said, how can I get this thing down and how can I keep it down over time? So we showed her low-fat, plant-based, whole food nutrition. And you can see she's an athlete. She loves to exercise. She's very active, and we love that. Her A1C fell from 7.2 to 5.8. She cut her insulin use by 25%. She dropped almost 20 pounds, and her cholesterol fell in the process. Okay, so her A1C is coming down. She's using exercise as a substitute, but she's using her nutrition right here as the most effective insulin sensitizer in her life. Now, one other thing I want to touch on here is that your A1C is what I call an incomplete indicator of your diabetes health. Well, what the heck do I mean by that? Remember this guy, Jonathan Cavallini? This is what he says. Hey guys, prove to me that I'm doing something wrong. My blood glucose is more stable than yours, and I feel like $1 million. So let's do a quick case study here. Jonathan, suppose you're a doctor, and Jonathan comes up to you and he says, hey, I need you to do a blood test. So you do a blood test, and this is what you find out. In April, Jonathan had an A1C of 8.4%. Now it's July, so 3 months have passed. He went from an A1C of 8.4 to 5.3%. He dropped his A1C by 3% in 3 months, which is a big change. His body weight came down from 189 to 163 pounds. So he lost 26 pounds in 3 months. And he looks like this now. He looks great. His BMI fell from the overweight, nearly obese range, 29.5, down right into the happy zone, 23.6. So he weighs less. He's now considered normal weight with a normal BMI. And the question that I have for you is Jonathan insulin sensitive? So in the chat box, take a look at this information and answer this question. If you're Jonathan's doctor and you see these changes in his biomarkers, do you give Jonathan a high five? Do you say, hey, way to go, buddy, you're insulin sensitive, looks like things are going well? Or do you pause and say, hold on a second, you're not insulin sensitive? Tell me what you think.
Okay, so Venus says yes. Susie says not necessarily. There's a lot of no's coming in. Susan says insulin resistant. Margaret says no. Mary says back to the drawing board, Jonathan. Josie says I don't know yet. Martin says not enough information to know. Deborah says depends on eating program. Vicky says I need more information. Kevin says not necessarily. Tammy says no. Lori says, she's thinking about it.
Okay. Who was it that says not enough information?
It's actually come in from several people. Sandy just said that.
Okay, Sandy plus others.
Yeah.
The answer is yes. You guys probably saw this previous webinar. The answer is we don't have enough information. Why do we not have enough information? Here's why. Because we have to still know a couple of other things in order to determine what, if he's actually insulin sensitive. His blood pressure, we don't know his blood pressure. That's a very important biomarker of insulin sensitivity. We know he's at his ideal body weight. Okay, his lipid panel, we don't know his cholesterol. We don't know his LDL cholesterol. We don't know his total cholesterol. We don't know his triglycerides. Without that information, we cannot make a determination. We do know his A1C and we do know his fasting blood glucose have both come down. So if you see here, this acronym right here, PILAF, P-I-L-A-F. My wife, Kylie Buckner, she's a registered nurse. She came up with this acronym. And this is brilliant because, first of all, rice pilaf tastes great. But second of all, because if you can just remember this acronym, this right here tells you all of the things that we recommend measuring and dropping into the quote unquote normal range in order to become insulin sensitive. If any of these markers are out of range, then you're technically not as insulin sensitive as you could be. So if you haven't already seen this on our blog, we have the insulin resistance checklist. So you can visit our blog, download this PDF, and here you can print this out, stick it on your fridge, and it'll allow you to sort of check off all the things that are moving in the right direction. So if you haven't done this yet, you can go take a look at it. Just type in insulin resistance checklist into Google and see what pops up, right? And you can get it right here. Yeah, insulin resistance checklist. Okay, so let's give Kylie a round of applause for coming up with this. She's brilliant, and it's actually helped a lot of our clients really understand and wrap their head around what is insulin resistance. How do I know when I'm insulin sensitive? All right, Tammy, here's another perfect example. We had the opportunity to meet Tammy in person like 4 or 5 days ago for the first time. We've been working with her for a year and a half, maybe almost 2 years at this point. When she first came to us, she was taking 2,000 milligrams of metformin because she was diagnosed as type 2 diabetic. Her A1C was 7.1. Her total cholesterol was highly elevated at 266, and her LDL was 160. So both of these are very high numbers. Her fasting blood glucose was elevated, and she was overweight, as you can see here on the left. So she adopted our methodology: low-fat, plant-based, whole foods, frequent movement, intermittent fasting on a periodic basis. In the first 4.5 months, she lost 37 pounds. She's lost substantially more than that at this point, and I don't know the actual number. Her fasting blood glucose went from the elevated range down into the the normal range, the non-diabetic range. Her A1C is now non-diabetic. Her cholesterol fell dramatically. It's lower than this now. Her LDL also fell, and I believe it's also lower than this. And she stopped using all oral medications and is no longer on metformin. So just like Christopher Hertel, just like Lindsay Garcia, Tammy is a completely different person because she's using the power of her food to actually not only drop her A1C, but to drop all the other risk factors for chronic disease. And then Sharon's another perfect example of this. She's living with type 1 diabetes like Christopher Hertel and like myself. Her A1C is also in the non-diabetic range, close to non-diabetic range. She dropped 26 pounds without even trying. She stopped using an oral amylin analog called Insulin. She's using 40% less insulin, and she feels like $1 million. So the system is really, truly very, very powerful. And what I want you guys to understand here is that just getting your A1C down and just having tunnel vision about your A1C and your blood glucose is only part of the picture. If you're truly going to be a really a healthy individual over the long term, this tunnel vision approach to diabetes is not going to work. We have to get rid of tunnel vision and ask ourselves a much bigger question, which is, can I get my A1C down? Can I control my blood glucose? But in the process, can I also reduce my risk for all of these other diabetes complications? And rather than you having to sit here and say, okay, how do I reduce my risk for high cholesterol? And then how do I do it for kidney failure? And then how do I do it for retinopathy? The beauty is that all of them are controlled by controlling your level of insulin resistance. So it's very important to become as insulin sensitive as possible and to drop your A1C at the same time. And if you can do those two things, just those two things, then your risk for all of these other long-term complications come down dramatically. We're going to show you the system that we've been talking about here, how to reduce your A1C and gain insulin sensitivity, in just 1 second. I wanted to create this webinar with a different name. And the name for the webinar, tell me what you guys think of this. I wanted to actually say how to get your best A1C in the next 60 days while maximizing your nutrient density and minimizing your risk for heart disease and cancer and chronic kidney disease and hypertension and high cholesterol and Alzheimer's disease and digestive inflammation and low energy and frustration. Okay? This is actually what the webinar should be called, right? Obviously, we can't make it that because it's a little bit on the long side. But the fact of the matter is, low-fat, plant-based, whole food nutrition can transform every aspect of your metabolic health. Diabetes just happens to be maybe the one thing that you're focused on, but all the other, endocrine and metabolic conditions that we talked about will also improve if you put the right system into play.
We're getting a lot of great feedback. That's a very catchy title. And we got to get this presentation on Oprah. It's the perfect name for this webinar. So I think we got the thumbs up.
All right. Robbie, let's make our next webinar with this title and see what happens.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
Robbie and I are writing a book, and this is the title.
Yeah. Peter says, what's the acronym for that?
Oh yeah.
That's great. That's great.
I'll come up with something catchy.
But like Cyrus said, we're going to tell you guys how to do this. We're going to talk about the program, the details, so you can become your most insulin sensitive possible. Let us know in the chat box if you want to learn about this. Click say yes. We want to hear. Make sure you guys are with us, still have energy, and you still have some brain power to learn about the program. So you can write yes in the chat box, and we'll talk about it all. So let's see here. We got Raphael saying yes. Nicole, Amy, yes. We got a lot of high, all caps yeses, exclamation points. Yes, please. Okay. All right. Let's talk about it. Let's go into the program that makes you insulin sensitive. It's very clear. It's simple to understand. And we have developed this into the Mastering Diabetes program, which is the world's first online coaching program that, again, focuses just on what Cyrus was talking about, maximizing your insulin sensitivity with low-fat, plant-based, whole food nutrition. So the good news about this is that the food tastes amazing. It's colorful. This is not one of those challenging dietary programs where you have to limit things, you have to measure food, you have to be careful what you're eating. You get an abundance of colorful, vibrant meals, as you can see on the screen. Plant-based foods are super, super tasty. Okay? So, what foods do you get to eat? We've put it into a green light, yellow light, and red light system. All right? The green light category, these are foods that you get to eat as much as you want to. Okay? Your body will tell you when you have had enough. You don't need to think about how much of these foods you're consuming. You'll get to a point where it's like, oh, I just don't want anymore when you eat these foods in their whole form. So the first category here is fruits. Yes, that includes mangoes, papaya, bananas, pears, you name it. Fruits you can think of are in the green light category. All right. Then we have non-starchy vegetables. Those are things like cauliflower, eggplant, stuff like that. Again, those foods are so full of water, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, and they're very low in calories. You just simply cannot overeat them, and they're going to help keep your blood glucose steady. Big part of our program. Now, starchy vegetables. These are things like potatoes, yams, butternut squash. A lot of people are scared of those foods, but just like Cyrus explained, when you're not eating a high-fat environment, these foods actually maximize your insulin sensitivity. All right. Beans, lentils, and peas, okay? These are the foods that some of the longest lived societies on the planet consume. These are, again, foods that are just loaded with fiber, vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. When you eat them, you're going to feel full, you're going to feel satisfied, and you're going to be maximizing your insulin sensitivity. Green leafy vegetables, that's lettuce, arugula, kale, Swiss chard. And when you follow this program, you will be amazed at how your taste buds will come alive. And when you make a dressing, you put some Swiss chard stems inside a dressing or something like that, you will be shocked at how salty it is when your taste buds come back and you're not eating processed garbage. All right, intact whole grains. Again, whole grains, so much confusion, so many people scared about them in the world of diabetes nutrition. Intact whole grains, they are come to you in their most whole form possible. They are great for people living with diabetes. They're low fat, full of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants, water. They're healthy. Herbs and spices add a ton of flavor to your meals. You get to use those as much as you want, full of antioxidants, great foods on our program. So that's the green light category. Now, the yellow light category, these are foods that are healthy. They're good. You can eat them. They can be part of your program, but you got to be careful. Okay. These are foods that are high in fat or a little bit processed, and they lead to insulin resistance when you have too much of them. Okay. So nuts, seeds, avocados, coconut meat, and olives. So these are foods that are plant-based. They're full of vitamins, minerals, antioxidants. They're healthy foods, but they're also very high in fat. So you can't sit down and go watch a movie and just eat nuts to your heart's content. You're going to easily overeat on them. They have a lot of calories packed into a small amount of food, and your stomach won't get distended, and you'll eat more calories than you need very easily with those foods. Pastas, these are processed foods. And anytime you process it a little bit more, again, it's going to be a little bit too much and lots of research on processing of carbohydrate-rich foods does also cause a problem for insulin resistance. Okay, so those are in the yellow light category. Breads, same problem here. Even if they're sprouted, so Ezekiel bread, it's good, but because it's been processed, it's much higher in calorie density, so it's easy to eat a small amount and gain weight, which is not going to help you when you're becoming insulin sensitive or trying to become more insulin sensitive. And they're more processed. So the guideline is to try and eat the original intact whole grain that bread was made out of. Okay, so instead of eating millet bread, it's better to just have a millet in a beautiful dinner meal with a bunch of vegetables. Okay, so that's the yellow light category. Red light, these are the foods you want to just completely avoid. They are dairy products, eggs, red and white meat, fish and shellfish, all those animal products. Their majority of them are very high in fat. Animal protein is problematic when you're trying to become the most insulin sensitive person you can be. You want to avoid those. Plus, a lot of these are pretty toxic products as well. Oils of any kind. Oil is the most refined food on the entire planet. There's no food more refined than just straight up oil. It's just pure fat. They've taken out all the vitamins, all the minerals, all the antioxidants, all the carbohydrate content, all the stuff that was in the original food. So if you want, olives are here in the yellow light category. Eat some whole olives. But olive oil is problematic, okay? Refined sugars, pastries, and breads, those are obvious, but we want to make it clear those are in the red light category. You don't want to consume those. So it's literally that simple, guys. It truly is. You follow this, it will work every single time, no question about it. Green light foods, you want to focus on those, okay? So these ingredients are made into beautiful, nutritious, delicious meals, all right? So you'll see on the screen here, we have a beans and corn chili up there in the upper right corner. We have a soup in the lower left corner. There's a burger made with whole ingredients in the middle there. You see fruit salads, lots of fruit. We're very fruit friendly at Mastering Diabetes. These are colorful, vibrant meals you get to eat. These are low fat, plant-based, whole food meals. They're going to help you maximize your insulin sensitivity. And it's so fun when you just focus on that one thing, like Cyrus was explaining. You just focus on maximizing insulin sensitivity, you're going to see the improvements and preventing all those other diseases. That's going to be the title of our next webinar, okay? It's very simple. Our whole program, everything we teach here of how to do this is designed to be simple and not overwhelming. We know you guys are busy. Life is hectic. There's so much confusing information. We got to make it simple. So that's what we're doing here. So,
one question that I wanted to ask.
Yeah, please.
If you guys, so Robbie and I are huge fruit fans, and we actually find that the more fruit that not only we eat, but the more fruit that our members eat, the better their blood glucose control becomes. And even a lot of doctors in the plant-based world don't necessarily know this or believe it to be true. Point being, if you're a fruit fan, could you write the word yes in the chat box? I have a feeling it's going to explode, but if you want to eat fruit, if you enjoy eating fruit, and if it's something that you haven't been doing much because you've been told not to, then trust me when I say that you're going to enjoy
Yes, program. I love this. Okay, so somebody's saying, I love mangoes. Is that okay to eat? You're talking to the mango man here. Cyrus Kambata is the mango man. It's official, all right? The answer is yes for Susan. You get to eat mangoes. Again, because when you're eating them in a low-fat environment, it's not the mango that was the problem. A lot of people are scared. It's not the mango that was the problem. It's the fact that you were living with insulin resistance, you had fat stored in your cells, and it prevents insulin from functioning properly. You see a high blood glucose. But as you lower the fat, you can enjoy the mangoes and see a great blood glucose profile. So we have this just flooding in. Mango with lime. People want pineapples. Yes, yes, yay. I love bananas. We got lots of enthusiasm for fruit.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it.
Excellent. Marlene says yes, but doctor says to limit it. Okay, well, you're in the right place. Let us show you how to adopt a low-fat, plant-based, whole food lifestyle. We do this through our coaching program that has 3 powerful tools. So we have a step-by-step online course, again, designed to make this not overwhelming and simple to transition. We have an online community on Facebook and outside of Facebook where you get questions answered. And then we also do live video Q&A calls. twice monthly. So these are the 3 tools the program is built around. We're going to go into a little more detail on each one of these. So in the online course, this is again very simple. It's designed step 1, you're going to set some goals. All right. You're going to learn a little bit more of the science. Then you're going to change your breakfast. Okay. Then you're going to get into doing that. And you're going to have all these other lessons you'll see on the screen, but it's in a sequential order. Simply change one meal at a time. We have seen that work over and over and over again. That's what results in the most long-term success. And then you get into more detailed lessons as you go down the path. Okay. We talk about using decision trees, very important tool for mastering your diabetes health. We talk about intermittent fasting, which is a very powerful tool. We've done other webinars on this topic to help you maximize your insulin sensitivity. It's very, very powerful for sensitizing your tissues to insulin. We talk about fitness. We talk about food logistics, social situations. We get into it all. So that's the online course. Now, as you go through that and you start implementing things, you're going to have questions. You're going to have situations that come up that are unique to your personal life and your situation, your health history, and you're going to want some questions answered. So we've designed a system where anytime you have a question, one of our amazing coaches is going to reply within 24 hours. So it's really day-by-day support, and you have community support from other people who are going through the same thing you're going through. That's really what this is designed to do. You can do this on Facebook. You can communicate with us also through the online course that you just saw. You'll see on the screen here. This is a place where if you're not a Facebook user, you're still going to be able to access our team and get your questions answered. But regardless of where you're posting, success is contagious. When you see other people sharing what's going on and you're like, oh man, it's working for them. It can work for me too. And when you see people posting pictures of what they're eating, you can get recipes, ideas, seasonal recipes. It's very, very inspiring. We have a lot of people in our coaching program right now. It's almost a little overwhelming, but it's all a good thing. And we are getting a success story almost every day of somebody going to their doctor saying, oh, look, I just got my A1C. I'm doing the program for a while. Or maybe I never posted, but I've got to share this news. That's happening over and over and over again. So you'll see all kinds of success stories on the screen here. People losing weight, people reducing their A1C, lowering their cholesterol, feeling better, getting more energy, and all happening quite quickly. So here we had a big A1C drop in 3 months, 7.2 to 5.9. People living with type 1 diabetes seeing very quick results, maximizing their insulin sensitivity as well, which is, again, not talked about enough in the type 1 diabetes world. So that is the community aspect of our program. Community is so, so important. So to build on that, we do twice monthly live Q&A calls. This is the first and third Sunday of every month. We use technology software called Zoom, and you can see us, we can see you, and we get to chat. So any question you had should be answered in the Facebook group very quickly, but sometimes it's nice to have a conversation about any given topic. Nothing is off limits. There's no such thing as a dumb question. A lot of people are asking questions about medication, and we're not doctors, so we can't change your medication. But we can share what we have seen in other clients, and people on the call can also chime in and say what they have experienced. You can gain insight and learn, and you can also learn how to talk to your doctor. So we cover all kinds of topics on these live Q&A calls. They're very, very fun, and they're really efficient as well. So this whole program, it's robust, got a lot of tools here. Let's look at the value. The online course itself is worth over $1,200. The Facebook community and the teachable community where we're responding within 24 hours is worth at least $1,000. Members only content, we're adding new recipes, seasonal new recipes, new challenges to really stay committed. That's worth at least $1,500. Then when you add in the Q&A video conferences with Cyrus and myself, that's over $1,200 at least. You add this up, you're going to get a value of $4,900. But we know that is not affordable for a lot of people. So that's why we've worked hard to make this program affordable and adjust the pricing, okay? Now, like I said earlier, the program is jam-packed, and we are adamant about providing high-quality service and truly answering those questions in the group in a timely manner, not missing them. So we have a wait list for the program. All right. We accept a limited number of registrations to make sure the quality is still there in our. For those of you on the webinar tonight, you get the opportunity to make sure that you're going to get the best price of this program that we've ever offered. All right. So I'm going to put up this little thing so you can join the wait list. You can click that in the window. But here's the deal. We have heard countless times from other peers in our space and even from members who are part of our program that it is just underpriced. For what we're offering, for the value we're giving, it's just simply underpriced. And we know we wanted to start very low to test this out, make sure it's going to work, and get as many people in as possible. But it's not going to stay like this forever. So if you are thinking, I want to join this coaching program, I want to be a part of this, I'm ready to change, I'm ready to get my best A1C, and you want to do so at the best price, you got to join the wait list. So there's a link I just pasted into the little box that popped up. Click the link, go to the website. You're going to enter your email to get on the wait list. And because you enter your email today, you're going to be, as you're part of this webinar, you're going to be locked in. You will get offered that price when there are spaces available. Okay. So if you have any questions about this program, we would love to answer them. We're also going to answer questions that you guys have put in the chat box that have not been answered already. And we have a comment here from Nick saying, I'm already a member. I have to start following it seriously. Absolutely. You got to use the tools. That's what we're here for. Our team is so dedicated to your success. We are there every day. Every day we are there wanting to help people. We want you to post. We want you to communicate with us. We're just so invested in getting you the best health you've ever experienced.
Hey, Robbie, there's a question that's coming in from Ahmed, and he basically says, hey, it's hard to keep up with this diet or this lifestyle because I'm a college student. What advice could you give to me, since both of you were diagnosed when you were in university, or you basically had type 1 diabetes when you were in college? So do you have any tips for Ahmed?
That's a great question. I think I found it actually quite easy in college, and mainly because I just made the decision that this is what I eat. Like when I was in college, I didn't join the food system. I didn't have a card with the cafeteria. I just bought my own food and I brought it with me. It's basically the same thing I do now. It can be very simple. And you can also learn, there's a lot of social situations in college. You can learn how to order at restaurants. This diet is so abundant. Almost any restaurant has salads, has potatoes, has ingredients that you can order. It's really not limiting. So the answer is just commit to it and you can make it happen, and just prepare and plan your meals. It really comes down to planning. That's it.
100%. One thing that I think would be really helpful is if you are a member of of a cafeteria, or you have access to a cafeteria, just go speak with the manager of the cafeteria. Go speak with the chefs and just be like, hey, you know what? I'm following a plant-based diet, and I eat absurd amounts of fruits and vegetables and beans and lentils and whole grains, like very large quantities. So could you please do me a favor? Could you help me out? And it's when you use those types of words, when you ask people for assistance, they'll go out of their way to help you out. And if you just say, hey, listen, I would really appreciate it if you could help me with, and then you kind of just explain to them, I like eating lots of fruits, bananas, apples, oranges, mangoes, whatever you got. Just think of me as like a monkey. Can you feed a monkey? Because if you can, I would really appreciate it. And watch, hopefully they'll be able to, come to your rescue and start providing you with more and more and more.
Yeah, and that's a great tip. And as Cyrus said earlier, we're writing a book. One of the points we're making in that section of the book is the importance of humor. Like Cyrus, the way Cyrus just said that, like, hey, can you feed a monkey? Like making the situation light. I mean, that's going to be a huge thing as a college student trying to make sure you're still having, enjoying some of the best years of your life, is just make the whole thing funny and fun, and don't take it too seriously.
Totally. Yeah. Make fun of yourself when possible if you're comfortable doing that, and watch as other people are like, oh, this guy Ahmed, he's pretty cool. Like he's kind of quirky, you know, he does his thing, but like whatever, you know, he's into it.
Totally.
Okay, next question that comes from Chauncey, I believe is her name. How do I gain weight on a high carb, low fat, plant based diet? I don't eat junk food, mostly smoothies, fresh fruit, legumes, quinoa, and other foods like that. Okay, so it is simple. If you are looking to gain weight, I've also been in a similar situation where I was trying to gain weight for a little while too. The simplest thing that you can do is add a fourth meal. So eat breakfast, eat lunch, eat dinner. Also eat a snack in the middle of the day. Okay, that's just, when you eat a snack. Okay, sorry, let me back up. Regardless of the type of meal you're eating, whether it's breakfast or lunch or dinner or snack, make sure that at every single meal you base that meal off of calorie dense foods. And when I say calorie dense foods, I mean things like bananas, potatoes, quinoa, beans, lentils, corn. These types of foods actually have a pretty substantial calorie density. And if those become the bulk of your food, then you can garnish the food with non-starchy vegetables like cauliflower and broccoli and tomatoes and okra, right? A lot of the times what we see is people who are trying to make big meals that are physically large, but they don't have very many calories. So make your foods calorie dense. And when you do that, then your total energy intake goes up, and then it's just easier to stay full and put on weight at the same time.
Perfect. Okay. I'm going to answer a couple questions that I see coming in the chat box. Missed the price of the program. Okay, so our coaching program, all the tools that I just explained, the price is $249 for an entire year of access to our coaching program. It's a subscription for a year, which is less than 70 cents a day. And again, what we're offering at that rate is just, it's amazing. And consistently been told that you guys need to raise your price. So it's going to happen eventually. But if you want to secure the lowest price, which is it's at right now, less than 70 cents a day, you got to join the wait list. So make sure to click that link. Somebody asks, is this a salt-free diet? So salt is optional. We want you to be low sodium because you get plenty of sodium from the foods you eat, the whole foods. But if you need it, you need that flavoring agent in your transition process, and you're not struggling with blood pressure issues and some heart disease issues, then in some cases it's fine. So again, that's another part of our coaching program, is that it's very personalized. We are going to communicate with you. We're going to learn what's going on with you, what your goals are as you write to us. And we're going to be able to make specific suggestions. It's something we're very passionate about. It's the reason we have a coaching program, is because we know it's not easy. You don't just hand somebody a book and then all of a sudden that's it. Like you're going to have personalized questions, and we want to answer them. We will answer them in a personalized way. So I hope that's helpful. All right.
Wendy asked a question. She says, is it true that you are not supposed to exercise when your blood glucose is high? And the answer is it depends on how high your blood glucose is. A lot of the times, doctors will tell you not to exercise when your blood glucose is super high. But in reality, exercise is one of the things that can actually really help bring your blood glucose down. So if your blood glucose is, let's say, 160, 200, 220, that's all in the sort of like safe range. And personally, I've been in that situation before, and I go and exercise, and it comes right down, and it comes down quickly. If your blood glucose is 350, 400, 450, like extremely elevated, oftentimes that coincides with being dehydrated as well. So if that's the case, and your blood glucose is very high, and there's some element of dehydration, then exercising is probably not going to be the smartest idea at that point. So if you're also if you've practiced with exercise and you know approximately how many points your blood glucose drops when you do perform exercise, that's going to be very helpful, because you can say to yourself, oh, if I go on a 30-minute run, I expect my glucose to drop by 70 points. Then it's a tool that you can use to bring your high blood glucose down.
Absolutely. Okay. Let's see. Somebody's saying, will you be able to tell us exactly what to eat? I mean, the answer to that question is yes. We have recipes, plenty of recipes in the coaching program. And if you communicate with us using the Facebook or Teachable, we can help you plan meals. We can tell you exactly what general guidelines for what to eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner and help you make that plan. So I can't go to your house and do the grocery shopping and make the food for you and put it in your mouth. I can't do that. But we can give you clear, so no question. Let's see.
What other questions we got?
Somebody asked, since I eat both Cyrus and I eat mostly fruit. So somebody was asking, how do we get our calcium and our protein? You want to answer that one, Cyrus?
Oh yeah. How do we get it? What about that? Sorry. How do we ensure that we're getting calcium and protein?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Here's how you do it. Okay. There's a lot of folklore floating around in the world of diet, and especially diabetes. And the folklore goes something like this. The foods that are the most calcium rich are milk and cheese. If you want to make sure that you're getting enough calcium, you have to integrate milk or cheese into your diet. Otherwise, you're going to become calcium deficient. That's folklore myth number one. Number two, in order to eat an adequate amount of protein, you have to eat meat or fish or poultry or dairy products, because those foods are high in protein and plant-based foods are low in protein. And therefore, if you're only eating plant-based foods, you're going to become protein deficient and you're going to waste away and you're going to look super skinny. Okay. Two giant, unbelievable myths. Okay. I mean, we could write a children's story here with all these like ridiculous folklore, dietary folklore that like is just pervasive in our society right now. This stuff is not evidence-based. Whoever came up with it and whoever perpetuates it, they don't have a good grasp of science, period, end of story. You want to eat calcium? Eat green leafy vegetables. Eat beans, eat lentils. Those things have the most calcium and the most bioavailable, absorbable calcium per unit calorie on the planet. Number two, you want to eat enough protein? Eat beans, eat lentils, eat bananas, eat quinoa, eat oatmeal. Believe it or not, if you eat an adequate number of calories from all of these plant-based sources, and you're making sure that you're hitting your calorie target, then a little bit of protein from quinoa, plus a little bit of protein from beans, plus a little bit from apples, plus a little bit from tomatoes, plus a little bit from lettuce adds up to being an appropriate amount of protein. And the last thing that I will add to this is that we've been told over and over and over again that the amount of protein that you need to consume is something on the order of about 1.2 grams per kilogram body weight. Okay. And don't worry about doing the math. But it turns out that what the standard American diet provides in terms of the amount of protein is too high. What the ketogenic diet provides is too high. Okay. Your basic protein requirement is much lower than you may have been led to believe. So your average person can get not only enough protein, but usually more than enough protein simply by eating a sufficient amount of calories from a plant-based diet. And if you do that, then you don't run into any protein deficiency problems, because the truth is that there is no protein deficiency. There's only one, and it's basically starvation. That's it.
There it is. Perfect. Okay, so I know Kylie's been answering a lot of questions here in the chat box, so we're going to try and get to all of them here. Somebody's saying, how do I get a personalized plan on what to eat? You got to get on the wait list. So make sure to click the link and get in our program, and you will get personalized guidance, no question about it. Somebody's saying, is there going to be a replay? Yes, there will be a replay.
Susan says, what if I'm not hungry? I'm considered obese and type 2, but there are times when I'm not hungry. Is it okay to skip meals? I once water fasted for 72 hours. What are your thoughts? So, Susan, one of the tenets of our coaching program is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is a tool that you can use just like exercise that's going to improve your insulin sensitivity. Just like a low-fat plant-based whole food diet is going to improve your insulin sensitivity. So if you find yourself not that hungry right now, it's totally fine. We give you an understanding of exactly how to perform intermittent fast, how often, and how long of a duration is necessary to actually improve insulin sensitivity and lose weight at the same time. And if that's something you're looking to do, then intermittent fasting is going to be a total game changer for you. So the answer to your question is yes, it's okay to not eat food. In fact, in a lot of situations, it's better to not eat food or to restrict your food intake. And if you're in the situation where you're living with diabetes and or obese, then intermittent fasting could be a really powerful strategy for you.
Okay, somebody asked about coffee. So I just pasted a link in the chat box to amlagreen.com, which is actually a great coffee substitute for people who want to continue having a little bit of coffee or a little bit of caffeine, but don't want to keep drinking coffee. So it's an amazing, amazing alternative. And we also have a decaf version of that if you're interested. So I just wanted to share that for somebody who's asking questions about coffee. Cyrus is a real expert on amla.
Yeah, almost good. It's the most powerful cholesterol reducing food on the planet, and it's the most powerful, and it's a berry that comes from India that's very powerful at reducing your cholesterol, reducing your triglycerides, and reducing your blood glucose altogether. So we found a way to import this stuff directly from India and put it into a tea. And all you got to do is basically just take a scoop of that tea, mix it with hot water, and put it in your body on a daily basis. People are raving about it. People are saying, oh my God, my blood glucose is coming down, my cholesterol's coming down, my blood pressure's coming down. And again, I don't want to mislead you into thinking, just eat your normal diet and take Amla Green. That is not going to work. That's not what we're saying. We're saying eat a low-fat, plant-based whole food diet, move your body, perform intermittent fasting when necessary, and have Amla Green. 1, 2, 3, 4, quadruple whammy. If you put that system into play, guaranteed your blood glucose will come down and you'll reverse your risk for chronic disease at the same time.
There's no question about it. Somebody's saying I had surgery and I'm taking aspirin for the next 30 days. Will Amla react with that? As far as I know, there's no contraindication to taking Amla and aspirin.
Not that I know.
Yeah. All right. So Lisa says, what is that called? It's amlagreen.com, Lisa. So I'll paste the link in again, but it's just called Amla Green. You can Google it as well. Okay. Let's see. Are there any other questions? I know there was a lot of questions that came in. Kylie's been answering. I hope we didn't miss any, but if you see any, Cyrus, let me know.
Yeah, I'm looking for them right now. Somebody said, what's the limit on intermittent fasting? How long can you go? And Shannon says, do you have a guide on intermittent fasting? Yes. Go to Google, type in Mastering Diabetes Intermittent Fasting. You'll get a blog post, and we have a whole detailed description of exactly how to perform intermittent fasting, specifically for living with diabetes. We recommend one of two options, either a once per week 24-hour intermittent fast or an everyday 16-8 fast, meaning fast for 16 hours, only eat for an 8-hour window. If you do one of those two techniques, you'll gain tremendous amounts of insulin sensitivity. I personally like the 16-8 fast on a daily basis because just like exercise, consistency is important. If you can become a consistent intermittent faster, the benefits are tremendous.
Okay, excellent. Wendy says, if I'm already on the wait list, I have to enter again. If you're already on the wait list, no, you don't need to enter again. You've already entered prior to this webinar. That means you're secured at the price that you saw on the page when you entered. So Wendy, you're in good shape. People are asking about EPA and DHA.
Right.
In short, the short story here is that whole thing has also been blown out of proportion. And the real problem is that the biggest problem here is that people are consuming too much omega-6 fatty acids through processed foods that include a lot of oils and other processed foods in general. Okay, that's the biggest problem. So when you adopt this diet, you start optimizing your ratio of omega-6 to omega-3s and your body's ability to create EPA and DHA, which it's designed to do, starts to get optimized. And then that's the best way to have a healthy fatty acid profile, is to address the root cause of the issue. And if you have any questions about this, you're concerned about it, the number one thing we suggest is to get a test, Omega Quant. You can go to omegaquant.com. You can order a test and get a thorough analysis of your omega-3 and omega-6 profile, and you can decide what steps you need to take to improve that, and then you can retest. That is a much smarter approach versus just going out and wasting money on supplements that you probably don't need and aren't addressing the root issue. Okay? I know there's a lot of confusion on that topic, but I promise you, it truly is that simple. I'll put a link to Omega Quant in the box too. It's just so people want to go check that out. Omega Quant. All right.
Right.
It's funny how people have made nutrition so much more than it really needs to be.
Yeah. That's exactly why we decided to start teaching people living with diabetes how to transform their health from the inside out, because the amount of folklore is just, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. And, you know, take it from me, I spend an exorbitant number of hours reading evidence-based nutrition research. I read scientific journals for fun. Something is wrong with me. I enjoy it. I've read thousands of papers on the topic. I put myself back through school. As I was going through this process, every single time I would come across another myth or some, you know, a previous myth that has just been like perpetuated over the course of time, I'm just sitting here and I'm like, this is unbelievable. There's millions of people around the planet that are just convinced of something that's just flat out not true, not even close to true. And the number of times that I see that is just a lot. So point being, if you guys want the truth, that's what we do. We teach you guys the truth. We teach you guys a system that, like I've been saying over and over again, gets you great results today, but gets you even better results tomorrow. Okay.
100%.
We're all about long-term health. We're all about long-term health. I want your A1C to drop. I do. I want you to get into a non-diabetic range if possible. But I'm not going to teach you how to do that if your risk for insulin resistance goes up. No deal. It's not going to happen. Instead, we're going to teach you how to drop your A1C and how to increase your insulin sensitivity at the same time. If and only if those two things are happening simultaneously, are you going to get incredible long-term benefits. That's what we did.
100%. And like Cyrus said, our recommendations are evidence-based. We did not make this up. We did not just get great results ourselves and then go and just like create a program just based on our own success. That's not what's going on here. It's evidence-based. It's very objective. We can back up all the suggestions we make as we're working with clients. And for example, we got somebody asking, is the diet low in B vitamins? The answer is absolutely no. And you can we teach people how to use nutrition software like Chronometer. And if you're interested in getting certain feedback on various nutrients, you can look in the software and you will see how our diet is very, very abundant in vitamin B vitamins. B12 is a different story. That we do suggest that you supplement. So that's different. But we're talking about niacin, riboflavin, thiamine. This diet is very, very abundant in those vitamins.
Last question I want to answer. Daniela says, does this diet work for MS, multiple sclerosis? Daniela, this diet is incredibly powerful for multiple sclerosis. We were just at a nutrition conference called the Plant-Based Nutrition and Health Conference in San Diego. We heard from multiple different nutrition experts. These are, doctors and researchers who are showing that not only in their personal health, they've been able to reverse MS, but they've taught clients how to do so. And the research also backs it up. Multiple sclerosis is an autoimmune condition that the symptoms of MS can come down dramatically. So if you're living with MS or somebody who's living with MS, the same approach that we're describing can be very, very effective. Rheumatoid arthritis is another perfect condition. Christopher Hertel is living with rheumatoid arthritis. He, technically speaking, hasn't reversed it, but he's gotten to a point where he's symptom-free. So a lot of these autoimmune conditions, which are sort of, confusing to a lot of researchers, can be treated and can be, you can become asymptomatic simply by adopting a truly nutrient-dense, low-fat, plant-based whole food diet. It's amazing.
It is beautiful. Absolutely.
All right, guys, thank you so much for being here today. Your questions, your participation have been fantastic. There's still 224 of you guys in the room. That just blows my mind. I absolutely love it. If you, again, are looking to transform your health from the inside out, drop your A1C, drop your risk for chronic disease. Trust me when I say get on the waiting list. Get on the waiting list because if you are interested in joining this coaching program, we would love to be able to help you. And the only way to get in the coaching program right now is to be on that waiting list. So let's do it. Hopefully we'll see you on the inside. And in the meantime, eat like a champ.
See you guys later.